Hello everyone, my name is Dylan Red and this is a video for uh, Public History Methods class. I am here in Old City Cemetery in Lynchburg, Virginia. Uh, describe the setting. Uh, I am right by the entrance and just by a family plot and a few other headstones here. The people buried here when this cemetery first opened in the early 1800s was mostly um, lower class African American Methodist people, because back then this cemetery was originally named Old Methodist Cemetery. Now it's just uh, dedicated to the city in general. Um, the changes throughout the cemetery is that uh, socially it grew to more upper class people, and with family plots, as I said, one right here. There's one right over this way where there are dedicated spots for that family to be buried, and mostly raised. Uh, they got hedges around their stuff to keep it more private, and you can see outlines compared to the regular uh, headstones. In fact, this cemetery is so old that some of the headstones, a few, probably 100 meters that way or so, are at the edge of the cemetery, are sunken into the ground. They're not well kept. Their names are gone. Probably, most likely, uh, sadly, a burial ground for someone who was African American and a slave, and which is kind of sad. Um, the cemetery kind of grew more in importance as the city grew, with more and more regulars and also rich people uh, being buried here. And this was probably eventually taken over by the city in general. So it would be less Methodist and more Baptist or universal denominational bearing. There are dedicated spots here, especially after the Civil War, where are buried Confederate and Union soldiers who probably faced, fought in battles of Lynchburg or around the area. There's a Confederate moderate monument, sorry, over there. There's also buildings used for medical purposes to examine, exhume bodies, and there's a station that was built in the 1830s to transport people for better transportation to the cemetery to mourn their loved ones, and also to transport bodies. Um, and there's also a chapel and mourning room. Um, there are more fancier headstones here, which are made of marble. Um, and it's just a encompassing of all walks of life now, and historical monuments, which I already mentioned. There's also a interesting site about a few 100 meters that way. A man in a very uh, mid to late 1700s was lynched, um, and during that time, this was the edge outside of city limits in Lynchburg, and um, that was done so to not really cause that much of a stir, and more of just a very act of barbarity, which shows you the uh, placement of this cemetery, which was first built outside of the city or on the edge of the city, and now it's an historical district. And the area now is um, more richer because this is a historical district, and you kind of have to be quite rich to own one of those homes. There's also still a heavily African American community here. There are parks and stuff like that, and amenities. Because right by here is also where the aviary and at once was a zoo right by, and at Miller Park. Um, and just being here now, I don't know if the cemetery is still being used, but it's now a historical marker and also used as a garden and arboretum. I believe that's the word for it. And there's also a dedicated spot for goers of today, of the present, to dispose of their loved ones and pets, of their ashes, and to there's also a garden here as well. So this cemetery has definitely changed throughout its life, and uh, even though it's not being really used as one currently, you could still see about almost 3 centuries of history here of Lynchburg. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned something. And also, do check out the Old City Cemetery online or in person. I do recommend it. It's very beautiful and it's a very big cemetery. And there's lots of history. Just be careful where you step. Uh, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.